everyone. So, thank you for sharing this video around to your pages and groups. I think everybody needs to learn this. And so I'm giving this next week on Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, for Our Revolution South Jersey. I've been practicing this for a good 3 months now. This is going to be, there's a lot of big changes for tonight, and I hope it's an improvement. Still needs work to fix up all of these big changes, but I think it's going to be significantly better than it has been. I'm recording audio, so if I mute and talk briefly, that's why, so I can give myself notes to fix it later. But let's go. And I will answer any of your questions at the end. I would love feedback. I would love your comments. And if there's any questions, I will answer this. I will answer it when it's over. This is about an hour long. Okay, my name is Jeff Epstein, and this is an introduction to modern monetary theory, or MMT.
When are we going to get serious, Candy, about the debt?
We got to deal with this big long-term debt problem, or it will deal with us.
But it's very simple. The government works like your house works. Our government has promised far more money than it actually has or probably ever will have.
We have to reduce our deficit, and we have to get back on a path that will allow us to pay down our debt.
We understand America is broke.
There is an urgent need for us to contain the growth of the deficit.
Taking money from our children and borrowing from China.
Our rising debt levels poses a national security threat.
We're broke. America's broke. Is to take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt.
When we raise and borrow all this money, 42 cents out of every dollar coming out of Washington, it's borrowed. 47% is coming from other countries like China.
Thank you to Jeff Ginter for putting that video together for me. So everything in that video should be very familiar to you. You've probably heard much of that stuff for your whole life. And I hope by the end of this presentation that you will begin to understand why pretty much every single word that was said is completely wrong. Mainstream economics says that big things are not possible, not without causing economic Armageddon. Modern monetary theory, or MMT, demonstrates that big things are possible, and they're possible now, and they always have been, without causing economic problems. Therefore, everything you know about money is wrong, and not just wrong, but wrong in a way that ensures that the wealthy few remain the wealthy few. I especially want to thank those who have helped me improve this lesson. Virginia Kotz, James Fiel Martinez, Aaron Taylor, Ben Siley, Laura Earle, and Esha Krishnaswamy. Thank you for being here and for listening with an open mind. I do know what I'm talking about, but I encourage you that when we are done, you should be skeptical and do your homework and decide for yourself. Most of your questions will be answered by the presentation itself, but I will answer whatever questions you have afterwards. MMT is easy, it is simple, and it is elegant. What's hard is letting go of your lifetime of miseducation. So MMT is a school of economic thought based on the ideas of Warren Mosler. And it is now backed by 25 years of research and scholarship. So here are some of the experts and the economists that have developed and continue to develop MMT. You will find most of these people on Twitter and happy to answer questions. And all of these people will confirm what I am telling you tonight. I am not an expert. I discovered MMT in February of 2018. What I'm good at, what I can do, is I can introduce the basics of MMT and express what the economists have taught me. But once your eyes are open to MMT, it is time to move on to the experts to learn more. The basics. What is money? What gives money value? And where does money come from? The government, money is a tool that the government uses to provision itself. And since we are the government, we define the government, therefore we are the government. So what the government needs, we need. We need to be defended. We need rule of law and infrastructure, and to take cool inventions and to scale them up for bigger use. We need to gather intelligence and many other things. So we need things to be done. The government needs things to be done, and so they tell the people to do them. And after they do them, they give them money. And just like a paycheck from our job, after taxes, that money is ours to keep, no strings attached. We owe it to no one. It is debt-free. That's important. Debt-free. So money is the incentive that the people get for doing what needs to be done. Money has value because it is backed by the full faith and credit of the government. And that's true. But more specifically, money has value because if we do not pay federal taxes with the money that the government gave us, then we have faith that there will be severe consequences. This means that you must get a job in order to get their money, in order to pay your federal taxes with their money, in order to avoid those penalties. And notice the order of operations. You cannot pay your taxes until you get their money. So federal taxes force people to use the government's money. And even if you don't have to pay federal taxes, you still need the government's money because you need to buy stuff. So in other words, this means that federal taxes drive money, or this is what we call drive money. Federal taxes drive money. So where does money come from? So first, in 1971, the United States, along with many other countries, stopped being on the gold standard, went off of the gold standard, and became a fiat currency. This means that it is not backed by anything physical. The Constitution of the United States. So where does money come from? We're going to answer it for the United States specifically, but many countries have something similar to this. The Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 8, defines the powers of Congress. Two of those powers are to coin money and to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting. To coin money means to create, as in to coin a phrase. So that means that Congress can create all kinds of money, paper bills, metallic coins, whatever else. So who creates the United States dollar? The answer is the central bank creates it. But they don't create it just because they want to. And in the United States, the central bank is called the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve does not create money just because they want to. They create it when they're commanded to do so by the Treasury. The Treasury is commanded to do so by a law that the president signed and after the federal budget is passed. The law that the president signed was originally a bill written by Congress. And in our corrupt system, Congress is under the influence of big money lobbyists and donors. The answer to who actually creates the dollar is the central bank. But the answer to who authorizes the creation of the United States dollar is Congress. Congress has the power to create money and to punish anybody else that tries to create money. Congress is the monopoly currency issuer, the only ones in the world who are allowed to authorize or appropriate the United States dollar. So in the United States, the Congress is the source of money. If resources are available, Congress can create as much money as they want, whenever they want, for whatever they want, to purchase those resources, to do what needs to be done. All they need is the votes. So here's an actual bill currently under consideration. This screenshot is from last year. This is the section of the bill called the Authorization of Appropriations. $2.7 billion authorized for fiscal year 2019. When this bill is passed into law and after the federal budget is passed, that is the amount of money that is authorized to be created. Because someone on a computer typed that number into a document. This is the amount that the authors of the bill have determined is necessary to purchase the resources that are necessary to implement this bill. Money is always created for a purpose, not just because they want pocket change. So everyone except Congress except the currency issuer, and I'll say more broadly the federal government, is a user of the dollar. Me and you and our families, our companies, our cities and towns, our states, and even other countries. Just a moment. Okay. So as far as the US dollar is concerned, China and Russia are users of the currency, are users of the US dollar. Okay, just making sure. Okay. We are all currency users of the US dollar. We are all in the same position, except for the amounts we have. Finally, all money in the economy comes from the currency issuer. Even if you work at a company that does no business with the government, perhaps you work at a grocery store. There is another company called ABC Widgets, and they have a contract with the federal government. They do what they're contracted to do. They get money from the government. Then they pay their employees, and then their employees go shopping. And one of their employees gives a nice tip to a waitress at a restaurant. And then that waitress goes to your grocery store, and then you get a paycheck with that money. All money in the economy comes from the currency issuer. So that's where money comes from. Now let's look at how money is created and how it moves through the economy. This is called reserve accounting. You have a calculator. You have 900 on that calculator. You want to add 100 to it to make it into 1,000. Where does that 100 come from? Do you need to find it? Do you need to borrow it from another calculator? Do you need to pay for it? When you press 100, it is. It is as if you are the god of numbers on that calculator. And that is pretty much how the currency issuer creates its own money. The currency issuer is the god of their money. Money is created when they will it to be. And for the currency issuer only, the word spend is exactly the same as the word create. They spend money into existence. They spend money into the economy. And think about it. Pretend that you are completely broke. You have no money. But if you were granted the power to create money, you can't keep it. You can only spend it. You can only give it to somebody else. If you had this power, reconnection successful. You with me? Okay. Do you guys miss anything? You're going to have to tell me if you missed anything. It disconnected and reconnected. I don't know if you missed that much or not. I hope not. So I'll start. I'll just start on this slide again, unless someone tells me that there was more. Okay. Reserve accounting occurs at the country's central bank. How is reserve accounting relevant to me and you? I have a bank account at my local branch of Wells Fargo on Fork Landing Road in my town, along with a lot of other individuals and businesses. Oops. There are branches of Wells Fargo all around the country, and all of these branches and all of their bank accounts and all of their customers are managed by Wells Fargo Corporate. Wells Fargo itself has a bank account at the central bank. They have about $600 billion in their bank account. And this is a significant percentage of the total of all the bank accounts at all the branches for all their customers. All banks in a country have a bank account at the central bank. And more accurately, it's a spreadsheet. The name of the bank, how much they have. So I have $1,000 in my bank account at my bank. My bank has $600 billion in their reserve account or reserves at the central bank. So the central bank is the bank of the banks. It's also the top bank. There is no Earth Bank. There is no Universe Bank. So we're going to show 3 examples of reserve accounting. One where money is created, one where money is destroyed, and another where money is transferred from one bank to another. Example 1, creating money. How does grandma get her Social Security benefits from the government? How does the government give it to grandma? The Social Security Administration determines that grandma is due $300. They communicate that to the central bank, and the central bank communicates that to grandma's bank, and this is what happens. Grandma's bank, their reserves are increased by $300. And then grandma's bank account is increased by $300. That's it. This is called marking up an account. Money is created because a number was made bigger. Reserve accounting example 2, destroying money. Let's start over again. Now, this time, Grandmom owes $100 in federal taxes. How does Grandmom pay those taxes? She sends in a tax return and a $100 check to the IRS. The IRS communicates with the central bank. The central bank communicates with Grandmom's bank. And this is what happens. Grandmom's bank, their reserves, are decreased by $100. And then Grandmom's bank account is decreased by $100. That's it. Exactly opposite. So when numbers are made smaller, this is called marking down an account. And that is how money is destroyed or disappears or dies. When numbers are made bigger, money is created or born. And this is all done on a computer using your finger on a keyboard. And in our current world, it's done on the internet. Here's Ben Bernanke. He was the chairman of the Federal Reserve during the Great Recession of 2008.
Commitments of $1 trillion, doubling the size of the Fed's balance sheet.
Is that tax money that the Fed is spending?
It's not tax money. The banks have accounts with the Fed much the same way that you have an account in a commercial bank. So to lend to a bank, we simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account that they have with the Fed. So it's much more akin, although not exactly the same, but it's much more akin to printing money than it is to borrowing.
To lend to a bank, we simply use a computer to mark up the size of the account that they have at the Fed. And when he says not exactly the same, he just means that they do it on a computer. What happens when money dies? So a child draws a bill, money's created. What happens when they erase that bill? What happened to that money? Where did it go? At the end of the game, you lower a scoreboard down to 0. What happens to those points? Where did they go? You have 1,000 on a calculator and you want to minus 100 from it, and now you have 900. Where did that 100 go? What happened to it? It didn't go anywhere because it never existed in the first place. To the currency issuer, money is a concept, not a thing. Last example, transferring money from one bank to another. And this is no more than the first 2 examples put together. So this is how money moves from one bank's reserves to another bank's reserves. So I get a paycheck from my company, and we have 2 separate banks. So I receive a paper paycheck from my company. I give that check to my bank. They tell me that the money will be in my account in about 24 hours. They communicate that check to the central bank, and then this is what happens. On my company's side, their bank account is lowered by 100. Their bank's reserves are lowered by 100. And now on my side, my bank's reserves are raised by 100, and my bank account is raised by 100. This is called reserve accounting. This is how money moves from one bank's reserves to another bank's reserves. This is called, I said that, $5 trillion moves through the central bank in the United States every day through the central banking system. So $5 trillion every day is about $2 quadrillion a year. Created currency. In the 1990s, economist Stephanie Kelton discovered Warren Mosler's ideas. And according to her, she initially disagreed with his ideas. She tried to prove him wrong. But after doing research, she ended up proving him right. This is an abstract from the paper of that research, part of the abstract. 1998 paper titled, Can Taxes and Bonds Finance Government Spending? Let's focus on just one sentence. Modern governments actually finance all of their spending through the direct creation of high-powered money. Modern governments actually finance all of their spending through the direct creation of high-powered money. And another way of saying this is, every dollar of federal spending is and has always been financed with created currency. Every federal benefit, every time it's paid. Every federal program and agency. Every federal salary, every paycheck ever received by a federal employee. The military, the salary of every military personnel and every piece of equipment is financed with created currency. And yet we often hear, I don't want my taxes paying for war, I want them paying for health care and education. But now we know that the military is a federal program. How does that make sense? Every Social Security benefit ever paid has been financed with created currency. So how can it ever go broke or be stolen from or be borrowed from? And the same with all federal benefits. Federal taxes do not fund federal spending. Federal spending funds federal taxes. And it's not just a cute statement. It's precisely true. And remember the order of operations. We cannot pay our taxes until we get the money from the government. Same abstract. Let's focus on a different. If you have problems, any problems, technical problems, consider closing and coming back in. That seems to fix most of them. So another sentence in the same abstract. It is argued that the proceeds from taxation and bond sales are technically incapable of financing government spending. And when she says technically incapable, she means impossible, as we will see. Economist Pavlina Cherneva. Taxes are not stockpiled in any material sense for future respending. Economist Randall Wray. Indeed, if the government spends and lends currency into existence, it clearly does not need tax revenue before it can spend. Stephanie Kelton from the same paper. Taxes are not even capable of financing government spending, since their collection implies their destruction. Just like 1,000 minus 100 equals 900, that 100 is destroyed. All federal spending is financed with created currency, which logically extends to federal taxes. Do not pay for anything. And this reinforces that. In the heart of the Great Depression, the U.S. government paid for two of the most ambitious projects in its history, World War II and FDR's New Deal. If the government needed our money, this simply wouldn't have been possible. Federal taxes don't pay for anything because all federal spending is financed with created currency, which is proven by the realities of reserve accounting. So this is the entire abstract from Stephanie Kelton's paper, and the sentence is immediately before the ones we just looked at. After carefully considering the complexities of reserve accounting, these are the conclusions. Since federal taxes do not pay for anything, then why do we pay federal taxes? Federal taxes drive money. The government uses money to provision itself. Federal taxes are one of many tools to control inflation. So we could raise taxes on a product or on the people to reduce demand. We could do the opposite. We could lower taxes on a product or on the people to increase demand. Federal taxes can also impose moral decisions. We could increase taxes to discourage things we don't want people to do by making it more expensive. We could decrease taxes to encourage behavior by making it less expensive. We could also tax the rich to discourage wealth inequality. We need to tax the rich because they're too damn rich. They profit off of our suffering. They purchase our politicians and our laws, and they are destroying our ability to live on the planet. Taxing the rich reduces their power, which instantly increases our power. We need to tax the rich because it is the moral and right thing to do, not because we need their money. Because when it comes to federal programs, it is not possible to get their money. This is the United States Congress, and each of these blocks represents the wealth of that Congress member. There are 535 Congress members. 37 of them have a personal wealth in the bottom 80% of the country. 80% of the country is 260 million Americans, and they are represented by 7% of Congress. The Pony for All Act of 2018. So let's do a thought experiment. Let's actually try and figure out how we can give every citizen a free pony if they want one. Because as silly as it is, to a very large scale, if not every single citizen, to a very large scale, this can be done. So what would it actually take to make this a reality? The first step is to understand our current situation. Excuse me. We can't know where we're going if we don't know where we've been. So as an example, we'll use the US. The US has 320 million people and has about 500,000 ponies. demand far outstrips supply, and we must make this roughly equal. The Pony for All Act, by design, is meant to give everyone a free pony, so we don't want to decrease demand in this particular situation. We must increase supply. So how do we get 500,000 to go up to 320 million? Given our current state of science and technology, and given the scale that we need, the only realistic solution is to reproduce. Mommy and daddy ponies are going to have to do their thing over and over and over again. Another question we need to answer is, how long will this take? In order to answer that, we must answer this question. What are the biological realities of ponies? How many ponies are there currently? What is their gestation period? After giving birth, how long does a mommy pony need to wait before she can do her thing again? How old does a pony need to be to give birth? And what's the mortality rate? So given our current situation, and given these biological realities, we determine it will take about 20 years. So let's get started. Now the pony population is exploding. We can care for 500,000, no problem, because we've been doing that. But now we're on our way to hundreds of millions, which has enormous consequences. We are going to need more supplies. We are going to need to educate millions of more people to help do this and to manage it once it's done. We need to distribute all of these things around the country to avoid overcrowding and to bring it closer to the people. So the Pony for All Act is going to create a whole new industry with good new jobs. And this is an excellent side benefit, but this is not the important point. So now it's 20 years later, and we have 320 million ponies. So it's time for the people to pick them up. And they can pick them up at Ponies R Us, and it's totally organized. We have the best people. That's not the issue. But the people don't know how to take care of ponies, so we need to train them. Their homes aren't prepared to handle ponies, so we need to prepare them. And all the supplies and services and labor that we just discussed are now needed by everybody. And finally, what happens when they die? With hundreds of millions, this is a serious question. So it takes 20 years. And this is the full life cycle. This is the details of what goes into our bill. And notice that we have not said a word about money. But now that we know the real resources involved, we can now determine how much those cost to purchase, and then we could authorize that in our bill. But let's say that there's a powerful person, and they find 20 years to be completely unacceptable. They say, I'll make my little girl wait 5 years, but there's no way I'm making her wait 20 years. She wants her pony, and she wants it right now. So we can make it the law. We could threaten severe consequences in that law. But let's say if we do that, that person says money is no object. We can throw $10 trillion at it. So the question is what happens if we try to do this? And the answer is that nothing happens, because forcing it to happen faster just doesn't work. Because no amount of money can change biological processes. No amount of money can change how quickly people can be educated. No amount of money can change how fast we can distribute these things, or how long it takes to train citizens, or how long it takes to prepare their homes. That's what's important. To the federal government, the only thing that matters is reality. Real resources are real. Money is not real to them. if the real resources are available, then creating the money to purchase them is not inflationary. If you have the resources to do it, you can do it. If you don't, then you can't. And when I say real resources, I mean raw materials, labor, technology, and time, because you need time to do it. So nothing can make the Pony for All Act happen in less than 20 years. The realities of real resources are outside of human control. And I find this to be one of MMT's most important insights. No matter how corrupt a person is, or how corrupt an organization is, the limitations of real resources can never be violated. And taking this further, money and rules are human-created concepts. It doesn't matter how many rules you have. It doesn't matter how good those rules are. When it comes down to it, humans don't follow rules. So we can give everybody a free pony, as ridiculous as it is. So if we can do that, then why in the world can't we give people free healthcare, universal healthcare, and education? And why especially? Since directly speaking, there are no resources involved in forgiving student debt or canceling student debt. Why can't we do that? So here's Alan Greenspan confirming everything we just concluded. Here he is talking with Paul Ryan, former Speaker of the House, in congressional testimony, under oath, and the subject is Social Security.
So having personal retirement accounts is another way of making a future retiree benefits more secure for their retirement. And also, do you believe that personal retirement accounts as a component to a system of solvency does help improve solvency? Because when you have a personal retirement account policy, it's accompanied with a benefit offset. With that feature in place, do you believe that personal retirement accounts can help us achieve solvency for the system and make those future retiree benefits more secure?
Well, I wouldn't say that the pay-as-you-go benefits are insecure in the sense that there's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to somebody. The question is, how do you set up a system which assures that the real assets are created which those benefits are employed to purchase? So it's not a question of security. It's a question of the structure of a financial system which assures that the real resources are created for retirement as distinct from the cash. The cash itself is nice to have, but it's got to be in the context of the real resources being created at the time those benefits are paid, so that you can purchase real resources with the benefits, which of course are cash.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a question of economic security. It's a question that the real resources are created for retirement, so that you can purchase the real resources with the benefits, which is the Social Security benefits, which is money. Paul Ryan regrets asking this question because it reveals that there's no economic reason to do it, and it shows that he just wants to privatize. So in his own way, Alan Greenspan confirms exactly what we just said. To the federal government, only reality matters, not money. And generally speaking, senior citizens don't need money. They only need the things, the resources that they can purchase with the money. Moving on to the federal deficit. The federal deficit is the amount spent into the economy in a single year by the federal government after taxes are collected, minus what is taxed back. So as an example, let's say that they spent $3 trillion this year. They taxed back 1.7. So what's left over is 1.3. That's the amount left in the economy, left in the people's pockets. Too much spending is not the problem. What matters is what they do and what they don't do, who they do it for and who they do not do it for. What matters is how moral, equitable, efficient, and inflationary their spending is. And what matters is they funnel it to the wealthy few because they're legally bribed to do it. Too much spending is not the problem. The problem is income inequality and poison water and poverty and suicide and so on. That's reality. What the government does is more important than what's left over. The federal deficit is like our federal paycheck. It is and really should be called our national income. When they say we have to reduce the deficit, it is no different than saying we have to reduce the debt-free income of the American people, of the people. Now the national debt. The national debt is the accumulation of every federal paycheck, what we used to call the federal deficit. Since 1796, when the first dollar was created, every single year added up together is the national debt. This is our debt-free savings of every citizen, our investments, our bank accounts, and our wallets. And more technically, it's all currency users. In the US, citizens hold about 70%. Currency users require income. If we don't get it from the government, we must get it from somewhere else. So currency users, for example, get a loan from a bank. We go to the bank and we ask for a loan, say $1,000. They analyze our history and they decide, will this person pay it back? If they believe that we will, they give us the money. As soon as we get that money, we are instantly in debt to that bank for $1,000 plus interest. We are in debt to a for-profit private corporation. This kind of debt is scary. They will do whatever it takes to get their money back. This is called private debt. With a bank loan, there is no equivalent situation for the currency issuer. There's just nothing that compares. The god of money does not need to borrow the money that only it can create. Borrowing from China, what does that mean? China doesn't create our money. They gave us stuff made in China, and we paid them with some money. What does it mean to borrow it back? We created it. There is no bank above the Congress. There is no bank above the currency issuer. So let me say. So the central bank must do as the Congress commands. We have to go to a bank to ask for money. So the national debt is our debt-free savings. And savings means debt-free. Like a paycheck from our job. We do what they asked us to do. They give us money. and then we get to do whatever we want with that money. No strings attached. We owe it to no one. The problem is not too much debt. The problem is wealth inequality, not wealth. The national debt is and should be called our national savings. Putting a debt onto a people that can't pay it is terrible. A currency issuer pretending that they can go broke when they actually have an abundance is just as terrible. Another video with Alan Greenspan.
Are U.S. Treasury bonds still safe to invest in?
Very much so. I think this is not an issue of credit rating. The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money on a computer to do that. There is zero probability of default. He didn't say low probability. He didn't say remote probability. He said zero probability. As long as the government still exists, it is impossible for them to not be able to pay its bills. Therefore, to the currency issuer, $1 is no different than $1 trillion. It's just 12 extra clicks on the keyboard for the zeros. And that's the answer to China. Oh, China wants all their money back and they're going to destroy the economy. What? We can pay them back with just a few extra clicks on the keyboard. And there's no resources involved in doing so. The real national debt that really will bankrupt our grandchildren is environmental devastation. And that has got nothing to do with money. All right, so that's pretty much MMT. And now I want to show what MMT has revealed to me about our government and our society. So mostly speaking, what I'm about to say comes from me, not MMT. So those who don't understand MMT or want you to not understand, those who don't understand MMT or don't want you to understand MMT will say things like the following. Creating money causes inflation. So if you create a single dollar, that will cause inflation. And if you dare try to create the second dollar, that will cause hyperinflation for sure. The reality is that if resources are available, creating currency to purchase them is not inflationary. If you create money without limits, it may cause hyperinflation. So don't do that. If you're hungry, eat. If you're starving, eat. If you're not hungry anymore, stop eating. If a tire is flat, fill it. If it's full, stop filling it. If it's overfilled, take some air out. We know the nature of a tire. We understand how a tire works. We have simple tools to prevent, measure, and respond to problems. And the same is true with inflation. We understand inflation. We have many tools to manage inflation. And hyperinflation, when it comes to an economy such as the United States, is not just unlikely, it's absurd. But we're not talking about money And we're not talking about flat tires. We're talking about people. If the people need help, help them. Providing for the people doesn't mean providing luxury for all the people. It means stopping suffering. You either have faith in the people or you don't. And if you don't have faith in the people, then that means you don't have faith in the government, because we are the government. We define the government. And if the government doesn't provide for the people, then the only ones that's left to do so is the super wealthy and their for-profit private corporations. The problem is not the government. The problem is those who have stolen our government from us and won't let us in. Our government has an abundance of resources that could be used to help the people, but they withhold that abundance because they're legally bribed to do it. So the people are left to fight over the scraps. And because of that, this is what happens. This is a scarcity mindset. Please take a moment to read that. I deserve more than you. Not because society is unjust and we're all doing the best we can in a terrible situation. No, I deserve more than you because you are less than me. You are less than me. And while this behavior is disgusting, what's really disgraceful is the system that allows it to happen. A government that allows their people to fight over scraps when they have more than enough to provide for all. They shame and punish their people for making bad decisions when they could easily prevent us from having to face those decisions to begin with. Our government manufactures scarcity. We have to be terrible to each other and to our families and to ourselves in order to survive. If the government won't provide for us, the only ones that are left to provide for us are for-profit private corporations. We are forced into private debt. Our lives are placed on the altar of their profit. And the owners of these companies are the ones that bribe our federal representatives to withhold that abundance, so they can profit off of it instead. And control. Because I go to my doctor and we decide what procedures I need, but I can't get it until I go begging to a private, for-profit health insurance company. And if they say no, then I could do a GoFundMe. So they sabotage our government with big money and then turn around and say that government is the problem. But they shut us out so we don't have any chances to make it better, but it doesn't matter because government is the problem. And then they shout that then they scream that the solution, the only solution, is the free market, which oh so coincidentally enriches those who sabotage our government. The super wealthy understand the economy, which is why they are the only ones that get everything they want. And meanwhile, we get nothing that we need. If you don't understand the economy, there is no point in discussing policy at all, regardless your point of view, because our conceptions of what policies are possible and not possible are so far off to be meaningless. Our federal representatives would rather be rich than help prevent the suffering and death of hundreds of millions of people. They don't want to admit that they're immoral and corrupt, so instead they pretend that they can't help us. And the way that they do this is by pretending that the currency issuer has the same financial constraints and worries and concerns around money as me and you, as currency users. They scare us with economic nonsense like this. Please take a moment to look at this, to read that.
When are we going to get serious, Candy, about the debt?
We got to deal with this big long-term debt problem, or it will deal with us.
But it's very simple. The government works like your house works. Our government has promised far more money than it actually has or probably ever will have.
We have to reduce our deficit, and we have to get back on a path that will allow us to pay down our debt.
We understand America is broke.
There is an urgent need for us to contain the growth of the deficit.
Taking money from our children and borrowing from China.
Our rising debt levels poses a national security threat.
We're broke. America's broke. Is to take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt.
When we raise and borrow all this money, 42 cents out of every dollar coming out of Washington, it's borrowed. 47% is coming from other countries like China.
So thanks again to Jeff Ginter for putting that together for me. So, President Obama said the United States government needs to take out a credit card from the Chinese government. So are they lying, or are they ignorant? They just don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't matter. I give benefit of the doubt to the powerless. I will not give benefit of the doubt to the powerful, who personally benefit off of the powerless remaining ignorant about how the economy works. Daring to even ask for what we need to survive will not just cause economic Armageddon for us, it will also bankrupt our grandchildren at some random point in the future. They tell us that not even preventing our death, suffering, bankruptcy, and unemployment is more important than fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility is a human-created concept. Death, suffering, bankruptcy, and unemployment is reality. And not only do they pretend that they can't provide for us, they also pretend that they don't know how. How are you going to pay for it? That's what the government, who does understand how the economy works, asks its people, who do not understand how the economy works. But somehow, the people have to figure it out for the government. Currency users have to worry about money. We have to worry about bills and debt collectors and bankruptcy. We have to worry about what will happen if we can't afford to pay our bills. Fiscal responsibility is critical to us. Private debt can be ruinous. Fiscal responsibility to the currency issuer is nonsensical. Public debt is nothing. Now you understand. A currency issuer is totally different than a currency user. Congressional appropriations. Here is the technically correct answer to how are you going to pay for it? Every federal program is paid for with congressional appropriations. We are a fiat currency. If we have the real resources to do it, then you can choose to create the money to purchase those resources to do it. But here's the answer that I believe should be given to this terrible question. We will pay for it by getting you out of office and replacing you with someone who will never ask that question again. They will do whatever it takes to just get the job done. And until that day, 100% of our energy and time will be dedicated to making your life a living hell. MMT demonstrates that our governments are capable of vastly more than we are told. MMT demonstrates that great things are possible right now, and they always have been. You and I need to worry about money. We don't need to worry about money when it comes to the federal government of the richest nation in the history of the world. MMT is non-fiction economics. Learning MMT will not stop the corrupt from doing bad things. Learning MMT will stop the corrupt from stopping us from doing good things. All right, that's it. Thank you. Look through your comments. Hi, Aaron. Yeah, I guess so, right? Tomorrow's tax day. Thank you. Nice to hear that. In order to reduce aggregate demand, wouldn't we have to increase taxes on the middle class and the poor, marginal propensity to consume? I'm not sure how. I'm not sure what to say in response to that. No, you know what? But that assumes that we can afford. There's a lot of private debt. It's going to erase private debt. So giving people money or services is going to free up that money that they no longer have to use for the private for-profit version. And they can also pay off their debts. They can use that money now to pay off their debts. So there's a lot of negative. So there's a lot of room to get to neutral before they start, getting above neutral as far as, too much demand for the middle class and the poor. That somewhat addresses it. All right. I hope it ended up working again. Some people are saying it was blanked out or frozen or whatever. My connection died briefly, but it seemed to come back quick, I believe. This is not easy to navigate here. The money would be nice to have, as if we wouldn't starve to death without money, right? Police brutality for all. Okay, that's fine. I agree with that. Just police brutality. How is the second Greenspan clip listed on YouTube? Probably can find it in just a moment. Greenspan, 0 probability. Videos. Yep. Just search for Greenspan, 0 probability. That's how you can find the second Greenspan clip with the Ron Paul at the end. Search, well, whatever. Search for Greenspan, 0 probability. Free. What? Free market, I guess? Yeah. Free for who? Free for the dominant to come in and crush everybody else. Free for the Little League to go onto the NFL field and pretend that that's like a fair fight. The video kind of reveals who the better liars are among the politicians, especially Hillary Clinton. She is not comfortable making that lie. Yeah, Paul Ryan must regret asking that question because it reveals, I don't know what he was thinking. Did he really not know? Or was he hoping that he would play along or something? Shaking my head every time, Russell, shaking my head every time that clip comes out, but that one is a bit different. I'm not sure which one you mean. Thank you for being here, Laura. Good, good. I'm glad. Russell, he said you reloaded and it came back. If you want me to, I'll take you off the credits, Laura. If you want, I would. If you object to being on there, I want to give you credit. But if you want to be off, that's perfectly fine. Oh, so what did you say? Oh, well, I'm not sure. I mean, Jeff has like a 3-4 minute version of that clip, and he cut out a minute from it because I am desperate to cut more out of this, so I said it had to be a minute. And I think this version that he came up with for me is perfect. It's just perfect. But in his presentation, it's, I'm guessing, around 4 minutes long. So that addresses Russell's comment. Anything else? I don't think so. Phew. All right, so I still have some work to do, but this felt better. A big part of what I have to do is just relax, because I feel sucked in by the script, and it's stressful to. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I felt a lot better this time. I made the script conform to me as opposed to me, what I've been doing, conforming to the script and feeling more stressed about it. But this felt like significant. I don't know how long it was. I'm guessing it was, I don't know, an hour and 15? I have no idea. But, so, all right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for your comments and your support. I'm giving this at least one more time a week from Sunday, but very likely I'm going to be rehearsing this. I happen to be off right now, so I may very well be rehearsing this significantly, between now and Sunday. I'm giving this officially for the first time a week from Tuesday for Our Revolution South Jersey at a local library. Jeff Ginter is going to be there to help me answer questions when the presentation is over, and I think it's cool that he and I are going to go to a diner as soon as the library closes, the venue, and we're going to, just keep talking. So Thank you all for being here, and I will see you next time. If you have more feedback, you can private message me or whatever you think. But thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. Bye.